People instantly make a decision as to whether or not they are going to accept other people as socially acceptable. Now, with a person with Aspies syndrome or a person who is an empath, that decision is often made without any consideration whatsoever. I say often, it's almost always made without any consideration whatsoever as to the person's true likability, their character, anything about them. That gets people in trouble because they will choose as their friends or people they want to be close to, and again, on sight, or within a few seconds, they will make that decision, and often they will choose to be people they are close to. Well, those people they choose are sometimes outright dangerous. That's where psychopaths come in. That's where narcissists come in and take advantage of people. So that is a natural trait, but it's very dangerous for them, and it's also not always very good for people with Asperger syndrome. So here are some things that we can do to overcome that. And to overcome it, we first of all need to come to understand why is it that once that decision is made, that first, let's don't call it hate at first sight, but dislike at first sight, we can actually overcome that because we don't overcome it because there are these 7 traits. Let's talk about them. Number 1 is you seem to be aloof. Because Aspies tend to be quiet, and again, there are exceptions. We talk about that in other videos, but because Aspies seem to be quiet, tend to be quiet, we are often misjudged as being a little bit arrogant, a little bit aloof. Why isn't this person joining in socially? That's the question that other people subconsciously ask, and the answer typically comes back not because you have Asperger syndrome, but they may say, well, it could be because you're shy or you're inhibited. But if you are an adult, you're supposed to know better than that. So it is misinterpreted as being aloof, as being arrogant. Number 2 is this. They decide that you're not worthy of their social interaction because you don't listen. And sometimes the fact of the matter is we don't listen. I know I have a problem with that. If I'm in a crowd of people and they start having conversation, first of all, they usually ignore me right off the bat. They don't even talk to me. But over the years I've learned, and I'm, pushing 70 years old, so I've learned a thing or two. That's why I'm doing these videos. I just want to share with you what I have learned. But it's like background noise. Have you ever been at a place where there's a radio playing in the background or elevator music, and you don't really pay attention to it unless there's a catchy song that you particularly like? That may catch your attention, but it's just background noise. So when we are in a group of people, whether it's a small group or a large group, those people talking, we're not always listening to what they're saying. Sometimes we are. But if we're not particularly interested, then we're not engaged, and our mind just kind of wanders. And we hear them, but we're not listening. When I was little, I think I was maybe 4 years old, and I was sitting in a Sunday school class, and the teacher asked me if I knew what she said. She said, "Did you hear me?" And I said, "Yeah, I heard you, but I don't know what you said." And the other kids just cracked up laughing because they thought that was funny. But yeah, I heard her. I just wasn't paying attention. So conversations tend to be background noise, and we're not listening to these people. And they take, maybe not offense, but they take exception to that, and they just as soon not talk to us because, well, we're not going to listen anyhow. Number 3 is because we tend to be hypersensitive. So we value social interaction. It's kind of like something that is of great value, like gold. And if you don't have much of it, then that's something that is highly valued. That's why gold is something that people want to have, is because they can't have it. There's not much of it. With an Aspie, that is what social interaction is. It's something that is very rare. So when somebody hurts us or they take something away from us, the way that we understand that is that they are taking something very valuable away from us, and we get offended, more so than other people who have lots of friends and lots of social interaction. Okay, they lose a friend or two, no big deal, particularly if they're not a good friend. But with an Aspie, if you lose anybody, it can cut very deep. Number 4, we have what I call And this is kind of just the opposite, but it's what I call cellophane syndrome. I guess a better way of saying that is that we are just too clingy. If we do find somebody that actually pays attention to us and actually likes us, wants to hang out, then we don't want to let them go. Now, I've seen people take this to a horrible extreme where it's almost like they're stalking other people. Now, most Aspies I don't think will do that, but we need to be aware of the fact that just like we can seem to be aloof or we could be too distant, we can also be too clingy. Again, I call that cellophane syndrome. Maybe you have had an occasion where you have had cellophane on your hand, a sheet of cellophane, and you try to shake it loose, and it doesn't come loose. So you pull it away with your other hand, and you shake it, and it still doesn't come loose. No matter what you do, you can't get this cellophane because of static electricity. Just that invisible force is holding it to you. And if we're too clingy with other people, they may try to shake us loose, and we don't even know it. There's just that invisible force that holds us to them. Got to be careful that when we make friends, we don't try to how do you say that? You don't be over friendly? Yeah, I guess that's the way to say it. Number 5 is sometimes we tend to be fault finders. This I don't think is true of every person with Asperger syndrome, but we like things in order. We do not like surprises. We like things the way that we can expect them. That's one of the reasons that Aspies could do well in the military if it weren't for this social aspect of the military. Everything is done in order, neatly and in order, and you know exactly what to expect. And everything is supposed to be in writing, so you can follow instructions. And if somebody does something out of line, then it's obvious. I mean, you got the rules right there. And people with Asperger syndrome tend to be rule followers. They just love it because, I don't know why, this is the way that nature has constructed us, the way that we are hardwired neurologically. So what happens if something is out of line? What happens if something is out of order? Then we find fault with that, and we don't mean to be critical, but we are. We don't mean to be a troublemaker, but that's the way we come across. Number 6 is sometimes we just get wrapped up in ourselves because we do tend to be introspective. We think a lot. You've heard the term overthinker. I think that often applies to people with Asperger syndrome. It's okay to think, and it's okay to have deep thoughts. We just can't do it all the time at the expense of other people. So if we are in a crowd of people or a group of people, there we are, thinking, overthinking. I like to take a long walk every day, and that's my time to think. When I'm around people, say I'm in a group of people in a restaurant, and we're having dinner, and they're all chattering and having fun, and I'm not part of the conversation, what am I doing? I'm thinking. My mind's wandering somewhere else. I'm having my own conversations. Well, when you do that, if people know you and love you, they got it. They understand it. It's no big deal to them. But to people you don't know, what they see, the way they misinterpret that, their perception or misperception is that you're just a guy who's all wrapped up in himself. So that first, what did we call it? Not hate at first sight, but that rejection at first sight is confirmed because they say, yeah, this is exactly who I thought this guy was. Well, number 7. We mentioned this very briefly a moment ago, but it is that we seem to be distant. That is because, like we just mentioned, we get wrapped up in ourselves, and then we seem like our mind is far, far, far away. Where our mind goes, our personality goes. And I don't know that that's a misperception. I think that could be very, very real, that we are it's too distant. A lot of times people refer to people with Asperger syndrome as space aliens. It's like we have a different personality totally. We're so different. It's like we are from a different planet. Well, the way that I like to say that is we have a different frequency, which I think is totally accurate. We, in a sense, speak a different language. We understand a different language. Not literally, but figuratively speaking. We don't understand what they're doing. We don't understand their body language. We don't understand, we do some to some degree, but we don't understand their social structure. We don't understand their hierarchy. We don't understand why they value social interaction as much as they do, even though we also value it, but we also value our downtime, our alone time. So we're distant, and they pick up on that. And that, again, kind of confirms their first initial impression of us. Yeah, we're too distant. Number 8, this is kind of rare, but it does happen, and that is sometimes Aspies come across as being too mean or too temperamental, which is kind of odd because people with Asperger syndrome tend to have a flat effect, that poker face. So why do they perceive us as being too mean? Well, we tend to have meltdowns. We internalize the frustration of rejection and trying to cope with all the sights and sounds and the social expectations that we can't handle. And then it just explodes all at once. And another thing that Aspies do a lot of times is we just get fed up with people. And because, they don't treat us well. And so we tend to recompense that mistreatment. So we come across as aloof, distant, and mean. Okay, well, I don't like to be around people like that. Who would? But if we are aware of those things, sometimes we can get control of them, and sometimes we can't. I don't know that it really matters, but if you want to be more socially interactive, or if your line of employment requires you to be more socially interactive, these are things we need to pay very close attention to. Number 9 is our last one, and that is we come across as not being cool. That is the first impression, as we said at the very onset of this presentation. That is the first observation, that we're just not cool. Because, as we mentioned in virtually every video we do, there is a social hierarchy that people are just simply not aware of, at least not consciously. I'm sure they know it, but they're not conscious of it. And there is this drive to climb to the top and get as high as you can in the social hierarchy. Years ago, it was very common for local newspapers to have a society page. And it was very important to know who you were in society, or where you placed in society. There is the so-called A list, and there is the B list, and that is a literal thing when it comes to inviting people to your event. And there's also this thing, if you're going to like a popular nightclub, they'll have a bouncer at the door, and he will select people that he thinks are cool by sight. And in they come, because people like to associate with those individuals who are cool. Now, if people observe you and you cannot be used to their social advantage, social climbing advantage, yeah, that's kind of selfish, isn't it? But that's the way people think. Then you're expendable. They don't need you because what they are doing innately, unconsciously, or subconsciously, they are social climbing. They are trying to reach as high as they can in the social hierarchy because that is to their advantage. That's where they can thrive. But you are a social liability. You don't help them climb. You actually pull them down. Being seen talking to you from their misperception is very misguided perception, but seen associating with you in any form or fashion is a liability, so they stay away from you. Not sure I know how to fix that, because that is something that is just human. That's one of the flaws of human character, of human mindset. That's just the way we are. If you see those two rectangles on the screen, that means we can continue this conversation if you want to. We got a lot more to talk about by simply clicking on one of those rectangles. If not, well, thanks for stopping in, and we will see you next time.